What is up, YouTube? It's your boy, Millsy, like hometown commander, back for another episode of Millsy Updates, the show where I update my main and test decks for you as we go through new sets and new cards being released. Of course, it's not just all about brewing new decks, it's about updating our previous decks. And I thought, why not start with probably one of my favorite decks I've ever brewed in Surrak and Goreclaw, Mono Green Stompy. I've taken a look at this deck on the channel before, and down the description below actually be the new updated deck list if you're interested for Outlaws at Thunder Junction. I actually did not update the deck for Karlov Manor or Fallout before Junction as well. So this is kind of a little bit of an upgrade since it's been a few months. And this is generally what I do with my main decks. I wait a few months and set some cards aside, and then I, test them all together. So today we're going to give a little bit of a deck tech for anyone who's never seen the deck before. Then we'll talk about what I added at the end. We're not going to do any gold fishing in today's episode like I normally do. We'll have plenty of time to gold fish my main decks in the future, but I really wanted to do a little bit of the deck tech and then some of the cards that I added in. But we're going to talk about kind of some keys to our deck. We're going to try to ramp. We need to get ourselves to 6 mana for Surrak and Goreclaw, and then even higher than that to get all of our big green creatures we want to play. With the updates and some of the cards in previously, we're really pulling into the +1/+1 counters that Surrak and Goreclaw gives. It gives all of our creatures trample, and then when another non-token creature ETBs, it gets a counter and gets haste. So we want to make sure that we can, one, take advantage of the haste, but number two, take advantage of the counters that are being put on. We'll talk about some green creatures that just really get better when they get given haste the turn they come in, and then we're just going to talk about the reason I built the deck, the just pure, unadulterated mono green Stompy fun that we get to have along the process. Well, for mana dorks and ramp, other than the classic green, 2 and 3 mana ramp spells you'd expect, we're playing some creatures that tap for mana or give us mana. Gwenna is one of my favorites, giving us 2 mana in combinations of colors, but we can spend it only to cast creature spells or activate abilities of creatures. And when we cast a creature spell with mana value or power fiber greater, we put a counter on it and untap it, meaning we could potentially tap Gwenna multiple times each turn. Hulking Raptor is a pretty cool body, 5/3 for 4 that just adds double green at the beginning of each of our pre-combat main phases. Kamiya Whispered Ones will add extra counters to anything that gets put on a counter, or any counters that adds counters to anything that would get counters put on it, but also taps for a mana where it's power. And this is really beneficial because we have things like other creatures that will just give it more counters or just buff its attack or other effects like that. And so Kamiya will particularly get bigger over the course of a game and tap for more and more mana. Nylea Keen-Eyed and Ronus' Monument both do something very similar, reducing the cost to cast green creature spells. Both of them have other abilities stapled on there, but those are the main ones. Selvala, again, paying a green and tapping it to add X in any combination of colors where X is the greatest power among creatures control. We have a lot of really big green creatures in the deck, which means we can add a ton of mana, and then we can actually get that extra card draw if its power is greater than other creature powers. Ronus' Monument doesn't do bad with Kami the Whispered Ones, giving it +2/+2, or giving any creature +2/+2 and trample, and it's really pushing forward maybe for some more fun. Emerald Medallion, again, just to reduce all our green spells by 1, and then the pair of Utopia Sprawl and Wild Growth are both going to be able to give us that 1 extra land, or 1 extra mana anytime we tap the land we enchant. Most of the lands in our deck are forests. There's only 4 non-forest lands in the deck, so Utopia Sprawl is almost always going to have something to hit, and then Wild Growth can just really help, depending on what we attach it to. We're getting into the counter synergies. There's a lot of really fun creatures in this deck. I finally added Kanawa the West Tree after a really long time, just because I realized that I had so many modified creatures in the deck that being able to just get those basic lands and kind of thin your deck and make sure you're drawing into more things is really good. Defiler Figure is one of my favorite green creatures to be printed in the last year or two. Gives you that kind of Phyrexian green mana pseudo thing on every permanent you cast. You can pay 2 life instead. One of the green symbols can help out on turns where you just want to slam things down to take advantage of its second ability, giving each creature +1/+1 counter every time you cast a green permanent, which can go wide and be a ton of fun. And then one of my favorite creatures I got to add to this deck when it became a Surrak and Goreclaw deck over the Goreclaw Terra Calcesima deck it was before, as Emergent Woodworm. This came out with Surrak and Goreclaw in March of the Machine. It has backup 3, so when it comes in, put 3+1/+1 counters on target creature. If it's another creature, it gains the following ability till end of turn. And my favorite target for this next ability is Surrak and Goreclaw, and we'll look at why. Whenever this creature attacks, you look at the top X cards of your library, where X is its power. You may put a permanent card with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom in a random order. What I really like about Woodworm is that it's going to come in as a 5/5, right? Because of Surrak and Goreclaw's ability if it's out. And so what I normally like to do is put this on Surrak and Goreclaw. It now becomes a 9/9. Now you have a 9/9 and a 5/5, both swinging with trample. And you get 2 copies of this ability, right? One at 9 and one at 5. And you can find a lot of really good things in this deck for either of those. Support enchantments, there's plenty of things we can do with them, but I love this ability because it can go in and get some of our cheaper permanents for free, or even into a middle-sized permanent for free. Vorinclex can double the amount of counters put on our things and halve the amount of counters put on our opponent's things. This can really hose certain decks we may be playing against, and it'll really push it in our favor. The Great Henge gives us card draw and a counter anytime a creature comes in, which stacks really well with Surrak and Claw's ability. And then fight rigging, we're almost always going to have a good fight rigging target. The cool part is after you play fight rigging, even if you already cast the hideaway spell, you still get a counter every turn, which means we can make sure that counters are going on the creatures we want them to go on to continually get the abilities. Okay, well, let's just talk about mono green value, and this is where a lot of the deck changed when I went from my Goreclaw Terror Calcesma deck to Surrak and Goreclaw, was saying, well, there are now green creatures I can really play because they come in with haste. Apex Devastator is one of my favorite examples. This is a card that I played in another deck that I got to add to Surrak and Goreclaw. Quadruple Cascade and itself for 10 mana. No matter whether or not someone counters the Apex Devastator, you're still getting Quadruple Cascade. All those, if they hit creatures, are going to come in right with Surrak and Goreclaw. It's haste and a counter. You can get a lot of crazy things with Apex Devastator. But again, that's an 11/11 coming in with 10/10 +1 counter and haste, and everything that comes in off of it. If Surrak and Goreclaw's out, and it could potentially end a game. Ghalta, Stampede, Tyrant, same thing, but we can put any number of creature cards from our hand onto the battlefield, all come in with a +1/+1 counter, all come in with haste if we have Surrak and Goreclaw out. And now for 8 mana, you're just getting a big alpha strike position towards our opponents. Remember, Surrak and Goreclaw gives everything trample, and then its abilities giving everything haste when they come in. Oher Kaslam is probably one of my favorite new cards for this deck, because with Surrak and Claw out, it comes in with haste, making it a 7/6. When it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. You can put a creature or land from among them, or land from among them onto the battlefield, the creature and a land, and basically just start mining out value off the top of your deck. So you could see we have a couple cards here that are just look at the top of our deck and get something really good. And I think that's what's going to help us kind of compound our value and push towards a big shot towards ending the game. Ulvenwald Hydra kind of acts as a ramp and a big beater. When it comes in, you can get a land card put on the battlefield tapped. My favorite targets for Ulvenwald Hydra are things like Castle Garenberg or Nykthos, if you don't have them already. Lands that can tap for a lot more than just 1 mana. And then, hey, it's a star where star is the number of lands we control. And, that probably isn't good at all. Last March of the Ents, 8 mana. Draw cards equal to the greatest toughness among creatures you control, and put that many number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. This is perfect with something like Ghalta or Thrasta, these big 10, 12 toughness creatures. Draw a bunch of cards, and if Surrak and Goreclaw's out, congratulations, all those creatures come in with haste and trample, and you're probably going to alpha strike at least one person at that point. See the Unwritten. Reveal the top 8, you can put a creature from among them on the battlefield, and if you have a creature power 4 or greater, you can put 2 of them. Again, perfect with Surrak and Goreclaw, because again, going to come in with haste, +1/+1 counter, trample, and you want to be able to just take a big attack. The point of this deck is to take the attacks when you can get them and get stuck in. And I feel like the Craterhoof on the left is no surprise to anyone who's played green. Craterhoof is good at what it does, and in this deck it's even better because it gets the counter when it comes in. Everything coming in before the Craterhoof and after it is going to, everything coming in before the Craterhoof had haste as long as Surrak and Goreclaw's out, and you're going to get a big attack in. But probably the one creature that I really wanted to play in the regular Goreclaw deck that never really got played was Pathbreaker Ibex. And there's 2 reasons why. One, it's not power 4 or greater, so it didn't get the reduction from Goreclaw. And 2, it doesn't have haste. It was 6 mana 3/3 that has to survive a turn. Well, now with Surrak and Goreclaw, this is a 4/4 that comes in with haste and is going to buff our entire board on attack. It's effectively a pseudo Craterhoof for a very similar mana cost, and it can come in with haste and do the exact same thing. This is Open Drill, just double the power and toughness of each creature we control till end of turn. Again, Surrak and Claw gives everybody trample, so we're already going to hit hard. Same thing with a natural growth, doing a very similar effect. Garrick's Uprising can give us another copy of Trample just in case Surrak and Goreclaw leaves the battlefield, but it's mainly here for that card draw every time a creature power 4 or greater comes in, where we can really just make sure we're drawing cards. And then we are playing the Triumph, again, just a way to help end the game. At the end of the day, as a Stompy deck, we have to end the game by attacking. And people like to kind of say what they want to say about Craterhoof and Triumph, but at the end of the day, we want to win by combat, and by darn it, both of them are going to help us win by combat. Well, let's talk about the cards that we added, right? Because at the end of the day, this is why we're doing this video. It's not just the deck tech, because I have talked about Surrak and Goreclaw on the channel before, but it's about the things we're updating the deck with. The first is Archdruid's Charmer. Really like this card a lot because it's kind of 3 different cards in one. The first ability is a pseudo-worldly tutor, right? Search your library for a creature or land, put it on the battlefield if it's a land, otherwise put it into your hand. So this is kind of a little bit of a better worldly tutor because you can get a land or a creature and put it right into your hand. The second ability is to put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control. So here's kind of a bite ability. But again, the thing to remember is this is at instant speed, so we could do this in response if we need to. And then the third one is kind of an slightly overcosted, well, on par, I guess, how you think about it, but it's kind of a Beast Within, Cross and Grip type ability. It's like a 1 mana less Force of Vigor, but like the point is that you're kind of playing in that space, but you really get your choice here, and I think it can be really helpful. If you have the extra green mana, go get the thing you want and get it into your hand. If you want the bite to just get through a last blocker or get an important piece out of the way, I like it. Incubation Druid probably should have been in the deck from the start. Because if it comes in after Surrak and Goreclaw, it's just going to always tap for 3 mana. Otherwise, we just got to get a counter on it somehow, and then it taps for 3 mana instead of 1. But a 2 mana dork that taps for 1 mana is perfectly fine with what we want to do, and we can always spend the mana to adapt it. But probably my favorite card of these editions in this is Railway Brawler. When I saw this card, I immediately knew this was going to be a Surrak and Goreclaw card, and I cannot wait to play this card. Reach Trample, when another creature ETBs, put X +1/+1 counters on it where X is its power. This plus Surrak and Goreclaw on the battlefield means that every creature that ETBs is getting X where X is its power, +1/+1/+1 counters on it, and haste, and we're probably just going to continue to get stuck in even easier with it on the battlefield. We added Seraph the Viper's Fang in here for some Death Touch. If you don't know, Death Touch pairs really well with Trample because in combat you only have to assign enough creature to enough damage to a creature to destroy it, which if you have Death Touch is only 1, meaning that our tramples are going to hit harder than our opponent's blocks. This is also just going to have all of our untapped creatures have hexproof, trying to protect Surrak and Goreclaw a little bit. But the other add that I knew was going to put in as soon as I saw it was Rampaging Yaguai. This is a 2/2 Bear Mutant X triple green where it comes in with X counters on it, and we can destroy any number of target artifacts or enchantments with total mana value X or less. So on a turn where we have a ton of mana, we need to get rid of some things, dump a ton of mana into Yaguai. It's going to come in with a ton of counters and hopefully haste as long as Surrak and Goreclaw is down. But I think no matter where you're at in the game, I think we will put enough mana into Yaguai to like really take advantage of it, and it's just going to come down as a good body with vigilance, and it's the kind of creature we want to see because no matter where we're at in the game, we may be able to just one-sided board wipe our opponents of artifacts and enchantments and then just really push through for the goods. But like I do in every episode of Millsy Brews, I still have considering boards for all my decks where cards that didn't make it this time, and I want to talk about 3 cards that didn't make it this time that I'm still very much considering. The first is the first of the non-OTJ cards, I guess the only of the non-OTJ cards, is Genesis Hydra. What I like about Genesis Hydra is a very similar thing I like to that, Emergent Woodworm style effect, where you're looking at the top X cards of your library and you're getting a non-land permanent, bringing it in. Remember, a lot of our creatures aren't X spells, right? So we don't have to worry about missing some of them and not getting enough value. But hey, putting 6 or 7 mana into Genesis Hydra is going to hit most of the green permanents in our deck, and is going to make sure we get the things we want. If we're looking for a medallion or the Ronis's Monument, or if we're looking for Garrick's Uprising or a natural growth, there's a lot of things we can hit very easily with Genesis Hydra. We could also just hit other creatures, a mana dork, or I like it. I think it scales well. I just, my problem in this deck is I have so many green creatures I really like, and it's tough to find the spots. And that's why the other two cards on the screen didn't get the spots. Is because my question became, what do I take out? I have some of the other creatures I love so much. Goldvein is in a similar spot to Genesis Hydra, where I think it's well worth the mana to come in, get an XX with Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, and get treasures when it dies. It makes Goldvein a tough target for our opponents to want to remove, depending on how big we can make it. And Vaultborn Tyrant is probably one of my favorite green creatures to be released in the last few months, because in Surrak and Goreclaw, this comes in with haste and a counter. Whenever it or another creature power 4 greater comes in, we draw a card and gain 3 life. So here's another one of these, Garrick's Uprising, Garrick's Pack Leader type abilities. But then when it dies, we get a copy of it. It's an artifact that comes back. I mean, this is a banger for 7 mana. My thing is, one, the copy of Vaultborn Tyrant I did get is going to go in Pantlaza, a deck we'll talk about in a week or two here once we start doing more of these updates. But number two, I kind of want to play with some of the other cards first, and maybe a card like, maybe another creature in the deck that I added more recently. Maybe it's finally time for me to pull something like Silverback Elder. Is that its name? From Damiari Brothers War, the gorilla that has abilities every time you cast a creature spell. Maybe it's finally time for something like that to come out, or finally time for something like Elder Gargaroth to come out. These green creatures I just love, but again, eventually these new green creatures are going to end up being better than the old ones. And I think part of me just wants to hold on to some of these green creatures that really made me love the deck like I had it back when it was Goreclaw, but I have to realize that probably Vaultborn Tyrant is just strictly better and needs to go in. But hey, I have time to test it, and believe me, it'll probably work itself in the future. But let me know, what do you think of Surrak and Goreclaw down in the comment section below. Like I said, this is a main deck of mine and a deck I really love. The deck list is going to be down in the description. And I can't wait to finally test the new stuff for this. I haven't played the deck in a little bit. I don't normally take it with me to the shop on Friday nights, although I think it's a perfect deck for new players to play sometimes, because, man, mono green stomping can be a ton of fun. But I think with these updates, I'll be bringing it more often to really test it. But let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I will catch you guys next time.